let me take you to a place, Osaka, Japan, to a convention there, and to a room within that venue. Now that we're here,
Just on the border of your waking mind, there lies another time.
that time is August of 1983, one which consciously or otherwise is etched deeply within the minds of any hot-blooded lover of the medium of anime. And in this room about 2,000 people have gathered, ones who would be referred to as otaku, if that term existed right now. But it does not yet. It will come into use in the ensuing years. For now, this amalgamation of fans of tokusatsu, sci-fi, and anime are gathered together awaiting the screening of the opening film for the 22nd annual Nihon SF Taikai, and the fourth one of them to be held in Osaka, Daikon 4. Only 2 years ago, the 20th Taikai was held in this same city, where a similar gathering took place for a similar opening film. It was a charming little short that told the story of an endearing girl tasked with the burden of delivering a glass of water to a struggling daikon radish, having to fight her way through wave after wave of various nerd culture references, until finally completing her task, and taking her place as the captain of the ship that Radish turned into. There had been rumors circulating that the same amateur team who assembled that film was back for this convention, with an even larger and more ambitious production. The lights dim, the projector begins running, and you see that same girl make her appearance. A low din of excited voices starts up, as those who watched the first film 2 years ago start asking themselves if it looked this good back then, and those who bought their own 8mm reels of Daikon 3 and have been rewatching it over those 2 years are amazed at the leap in production quality this small group of creatives has made. That film's events and highlights are summarized in an economic 1-minute time frame, and then a beautiful theremin beams our heroine up into the Daikon, which is looking better than ever, and blasts off into the night sky. What an incredible nostalgia trip this is for all of them. But now the title card for this year's convention drops. Synthesizers enter, and just as the faces of various audience members recognizing the song they are about to have the joy of hearing begin to glow with anticipation, that black void begins to fill with points of light, stars drifting past us as we journey through space. Soon we're warping through time as well, with that girl we fell in love with flashing before our eyes, as those synths swell, and our collective hearts with them. With the drum kick, we're off. A chorus of joyful "ehs" erupt. Tears are already forming in some people's eyes. What we now witness as our little girl, all grown up, impossibly beautiful, and the lyrics that come in are an immaculate reflection of our collective mindset. In the form of one of the greatest compositions in the history of music, a story of bedazzlement and awe is told. A story of this man being presented with something from a time and place beyond his own. Something so wondrous as to strain his ability to believe it to be anything beyond some dream or fabrication. And most importantly, it captures the most intense feeling evoked by great art, the crushing knowledge as you consume it that it will be fleeting. We see masterfully rendered scenes of her fighting through waves of Zaku, hopping onto a sword she's now surfing on in order to cut through layer after layer of thick sci-fi references. We witness a visually stunning Itano circus of flying blades, as the song goes into an exhilarating piano solo, soaring alongside our collective spirits. As the lyrics return, scenes of near indescribable beauty erupt on screen. Our hands are now shaking so heavily with the sobs that rack our body that typing this script is becoming difficult, the monitor being blurred behind a mask of tears, my face beginning to hurt with the stupidly wide grin plastered to it. A brief reprieve is granted as the music slows. But all of that emotion returns more violently than ever as it ramps up once again. Trees springing up while a deep, obsessive, inescapable love for this medium digs its roots into my very soul. And the chorus that will be sung aloud on a near daily basis comes back one last time, as we see the words that will become a touchstone both cultural and personal come onto the screen. Daikon 4. It really is impossible for me to discuss this film without attempting in some limited, clumsy manner to convey the feelings of visceral, raw emotion it evokes in me. And in order to do that, I needed to take you back to that fateful time and place, to that crowded, sweaty convention room. Because that screening, that event that was so monumental for the medium and for the fandom, is an integral part of my own emotional reaction to the Daikon films. For all the cringy, geeky joy that experience I described contains, it is legitimately what races through my head whenever I sit down to rewatch Daikon. What must it have been like, coming on the heels of foundational otaku properties such as Mobile Suit Gundam, whose final compilation film had released a year prior, Super Dimension Fortress Macross, which had finished its television run only 2 months prior, and Urusei Yatsura, which was going strong nearly 2 years into its run, and had gotten its first theatrical adaptation earlier that year. To witness this remarkable love letter to the medium and its fandom, how mind-blowing must it have been? I not only vicariously experienced what those early pre-otaku experienced whenever I watched Daikon, but probably do so to a degree exaggerated by a sense of nostalgia and romanticism that's become attached to it. There's a less melodramatic basis for being invested in this work, though. The Daikon animations served as the genesis of Studio Gainax, which would go on to in many ways embody the ideals first set forth in them, and for good reason. It and their future works have this element of being otaku love letters, because the people composing this studio loved the medium, in the same manner that I and others do. The same mindset that led me to drop out of college and go hoarse, spending an hour trying to stutter out my 5,000-word script in a manner that imitates natural human speech as well as I could manage last year, led a group of 3 college students to ignore their coursework in 1981 and instead work up until the day it was screened, completing the Daikon 3 animation. And then to do the same thing 2 years later for Daikon 4, only with a team of 12 this time instead, creating what they called a literal sweatshop, locking the building and those working inside it at 9 p.m. and working through the night without air conditioning. It's what led Gainax's first CEO, Toshio Okada, to also drop out of college, noticing a trend here, and join a sci-fi fan group instead, organizing the commissioning of Anno and Friends' work for the Daikon events. Maybe it's what led Okada to start his own YouTube channel where he discusses the state of the industry. See? This is the modern hotbed of that burning otaku spirit. The reason Gainax and now Trigger series tend to be held in such high regard by many of the most go-getting members of anime YouTube is because we share this basic outlook, of scorning conventional wisdom and choosing, through somewhat questionable reasoning, to stake our livelihoods on our passions. Studio Gainax is unique in the landscape of anime production studios, with a history that in my eye captures the spirit of the medium and its appeal for me in one fell swoop. Nearly every studio is an offshoot of one of those few foundational companies, and the few outliers are things like Studio Statelight, which did create tons of auteur director Shoji Kawamori's stuff, but which was founded as a division of a pachinko company, or Studio A1 Pictures, which was founded by Aniplex, the animation division of Sony Music Entertainment Japan. So not exactly a family-owned and operated small business here. Gainax was just a bunch of amateurs and fans, none of these industry roots or corporate foundations, and that's why they were able to revolutionize the industry. For years, I've been amused by the irony of Neon Genesis Evangelion, which in all of its critique of otaku escapism and consumerism became itself perhaps the most commercialized franchise in anime, raking in obscene amounts of money and changing the way the business functions. But it was able to do that because, perhaps unsurprisingly, hardcore fans of the medium understood its appeal to that hardcore fan base better than businessmen did. And by being both the ones creating the series and running the studio that created it, they were able to minimize outside corporate influence. The Daikon animations are the genesis of all of this, and possibly the purest distillation of it, and as a result of that they will continue to be cherished by generations of otaku to come. A huge thank you to Joji Matthews who commissioned this video, because it was a total joy to talk about the Daikon animations, along with Goose, Chelsea Chester, Culver James Kamai, Chris Wagner, and the rest of my patrons who all helped to make this possible.